man. I gotta remember, there's a lot of smoke when you teleport like that. Oh, hey, what's up? Give me 1 second. Roll the intro. I'll get right back with you. Everyone has that franchise that is really special to them, where no matter what happens, they eventually always come back to it. For me, that franchise is about an orange jumpsuit wearing blonde kid named Naruto. And to celebrate my love for this series, I'm going to be starting an annual event where every November I'm going to be taking a look at a group of Naruto games. And this November, we're going to be taking a look at the Ultimate Ninja series for PS2. Welcome to the very first Naruto November. Let's get one thing out of the way. I am not a huge fan of anime. Despite a few exceptions, I really don't care for the genre. But again, Naruto is the main exception to that rule. Now, being a huge fan of the series, of course I was going to play the games associated with the series. One of the first exposures to Naruto video games was today's game, Naruto Ultimate Ninja for the PS2. This game was developed by CyberConnect 2, a developer who we will get to know very well as we do more Naruto games. But this was their first attempt at making a Naruto game. So how well did they do? In short, let's take a look at Naruto Ultimate Ninja for the PS2. Now when I'm looking at a Naruto game, there are several factors that I'm looking at. The first one, obviously, is the gameplay. Is the game fun to play? Now answering that question is rather tough. You see, Naruto Ultimate Ninja is a 2D fighter, meaning you move from left to right. But Ultimate Ninja has an added element of verticality, as you can jump around and even teleport to the back of the arena. As far as the actual fighting goes, well, that's where the tough part actually comes in. There aren't a whole lot of combos in the game. You have a simple ground combo, a combo that you can do in the air, and that's it as far as melee combos are concerned. Other than that, you can do one jutsu attack, and I believe every character has a unique jutsu attack. Then, there's the special attack. Press the triangle button, your character will glow a certain color, depending on how much chakra you use to hit your enemy, and then you enter a special mode, where you have to press the matching buttons in order to continue the special attack. Now these special attacks are how you do the most damage to your enemies. However, you can't spam them due to the chakra system. This meter represents the amount of chakra or energy you have at the moment. You use chakra for the jutsu attacks and the special attacks. You can have up to 3 levels of chakra at the maximum, and you can slowly recharge it by pressing down on the D-pad. However, I wouldn't recommend recharging using this method. I would recommend relying on your assist characters. Assist characters can assist you. Shocking, I know. They assist you by dropping items for you, although you have to be right in front of them for the characters to drop the items. The items they drop can range from health pickups, throwable weapons, and chakra refill pickups, but they're not as useful as assists would go on to be in later CyberConnect 2 Naruto games. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Why is it tough to talk about the gameplay? Well, because Naruto Clash of Ninja exists. This is a 3D fighter that released in April of 2003. The reason I bring this game up is because when you compare Ultimate Ninja and Clash of Ninja, the clear victor in terms of pure fun gameplay is Clash of Ninja. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth into Clash of Ninja. That game and series will get its time in the spotlight eventually. But for now, all I will say is that comparing these games side to side only makes the gameplay of Ultimate Ninja inferior in a lot of ways. However, gameplay isn't the only thing that I look at when talking about a Naruto game. Another thing I look at is how the game adapts the visuals of the show. Ultimate Ninja actually does a pretty good job in this department. It goes for a bit of a hand-drawn style, which is fairly unique considering most Naruto games go for more of a CG art style. This makes Ultimate Ninja stand out from the crowd, which in turn helps make it more memorable in the long run. However, it doesn't always use this style, specifically in the little talking segments between fights in the scenario mode. Here, they just use cutouts of the characters to show them talking. This isn't bad. For the time, I bet this was cool, but nowadays this just doesn't do it for me. Now, I wish I had more to say on this part of the game, but I don't. So instead, we're going to talk about the third thing I look for when talking about a Naruto game: how the game adapts the story of the show. Now, this might be a controversial statement, but this game is very bad when it comes to representing the story of Naruto. You see, this game doesn't have a story mode, instead it has the scenario mode. This is your basic arcade type mode, where each character has a set of enemies he or she needs to beat with a bit of talking between the battles. The problem is that the setup for some of the battles aren't very accurate to the show. For example, you guys remember that episode where Sasuke goes crazy after being covered with a curse mark? Yeah, really intense stuff. Then you probably also remember the part where Sakura beat the crap out of him afterwards. Oh, it's that? You don't remember that? Well, that's probably because that last part didn't happen. This leads me to say that the scenario mode overall isn't really going for an accurate retelling of the show. Instead, it seems to be going for more of a random battles that the characters have likely faced type of story. Again, it isn't terrible, but it could have been much better. Now, before we move on to my final thoughts on the game, let's talk about some of the other things to do outside of the scenario mode. There is a mission mode, but this is basically just regular fights with special conditions attached to the fight. Now, playing this mission mode is how you unlock the 2 extra characters outside of the scenario mode. Also, there are some unlockables you can get, but all of this doesn't mean much to me. This is all going back to the beginning of the video, when I talked about the gameplay. There just isn't much to it, so I'm not all that compelled to come back and play it. While the art style is a nice representation of the show, that's the best part of the game, to be frank. Even the scenario mode gets old pretty quick due to it being a so-so representation of the Naruto story, and a lack of a real challenge. Frankly, and this is my opinion, the only reason this game sold as well as it did is because there wasn't a whole lot of Naruto games at the time. This is what fans had, so they bought it. And I'm glad they did, because Ultimate Ninja 2 would release in September of 2004, and to say that CyberConnect 2 learned from their mistakes would be an understatement. CyberConnect 2 once again develops the game, and the gameplay is mostly the same as far as basic combat goes. You can now do 2 unique jutsu attacks, and you can even customize the jutsu attacks for some added variety. The special attacks also got some changes, and definitely not for the better. They still work in the same way. You can charge up by pressing the triangle button. Depending on the amount of chakra that you use, you'll be a different color. But the change comes in the minigame that you play during the actual special attack. The press the matching button thing returns, but now there are 2 new minigames to play during the special attack. One where you need to mash one of the main buttons on your controller more than your enemy, and one where you need to spin the left thumbstick more than the enemy. The button mashing one is fine, but the left thumbstick spinning minigame is pure garbage. It's just so unnecessary. I get it, Naruto is performing the Rasengan, but do I need to do a rotating like minigame to get the point of that? Also, this minigame just hurts your hands so much. Now, one last thing to mention about the special attacks before moving on, is that whenever you use a level 3 special attack and perform the minigame successfully, your character gets put into a superpowered state. You're pretty much unstoppable while in this state. You do more damage, your attacks literally shake the screen, and for certain characters, they get special moves while in these powered up states. That pretty much covers all of the changes made when talking about basic combat. Now let's move on to the story mode. Now we'll discuss the narrative parts of the story mode later on in the video, but for now I want to discuss the gameplay changes made to this story mode, because there are quite a few changes to the way you experience the story. For one, it's not a standard arcade mode. It's a real story mode with cutscenes and everything. But the battles are where the story gets interesting. Battles have conditions that you must fulfill in order to move on in the story. Most of the conditions are just a win, but some are special. Some give the enemy specific advantages over you, like better speed or defense. But then there's Kabuto, and Kabuto can heal himself during the fight. Now nowhere is this more of a problem than the first time you fight him. In this fight, the conditions to win are of course, defeat him while his health is regenerating, and you must defeat him with a level 3 special attack. Note, if you defeat him without using the level 3 special attack, you lose. No joke. What ends up happening is that you use your chakra to do big damage, but by the time you need to use your level 3 special, you've used so much of your chakra that you pretty much have to charge it all the way back up. Thankfully, your chakra does charge faster when holding down on the D-pad, but still, it sucks. Mainly because when you're trying to charge your chakra, Kabuto is healing himself, so by the time you get your chakra back, he's almost completely healed himself. Jeez, this fight sucks. Other than that one glaring exception, the story mode is far more enjoyable to play this time around. In fact, the story mode here was game-changing in one regard. This was the first game to feature a fully explorable Konoha, meaning that you can fully explore the world of Naruto, and for a first attempt, it's great. You can walk around and talk to almost all the important characters in Naruto. You can even explore cities outside of Konoha, and there are side quests that you can do after completing the main story. The last thing I can think of that the main story has is an upgrade system. That's right, you can upgrade certain characters the more you use them in the story. When you combine all these additions to the story, it really makes it feel like a proper Naruto adventure game. Which is funny, because this is years before we got an actual Naruto adventure game. Now with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the way this game adapts the look of the show. It's literally the same. Okay, there might be some minor differences, but not much. The game still keeps the hand-drawn look of the last game, which still gives it a unique look, but still the lack of improvement is kind of sad. But oh well. Now let's move on to the narrative. How did they adapt the story of Naruto into the game? To put it simply, this game is leaps and bounds better than the last game in terms of story mode. For one, it's not just an arcade mode, it's a real story mode with cutscenes and everything. Granted, most of the cutscenes are just the characters standing still with the characters' portraits doing the talking, but still, it's more than the last game. As far as the storylines go, the game adapts the destruction of the Leaf Arc and the Sannin reunion arc. The game does a good job adapting the arcs. It captures most of the major story beats in a satisfying way, but the really interesting part comes in after the Sannin arc, because CyberConnect 2 went an extra step and created an original story just for this game. Now normally this wouldn't go so well, as we'll discover when we get to more Naruto games with original stories, but in this case, it works out great, as in my probably unpopular opinion, CyberConnect 2 has managed to tell an original story that fits quite nicely within Naruto. This is a surprise, since we'll discover later on, most Naruto game developers drop the ball hard when trying to create an original story to work within the Naruto universe. The story follows Kakashi after his Sharingan is effectively taken away by Orochimaru, and we get to see how Kakashi deals with this. It's a really solid story, and one that I really enjoy. The fact that CyberConnect 2 managed to make a massive jump in quality in the story department after the first game is really incredible. Ultimately, I think that's what makes this game the superior product when compared to the first game. Despite a few gameplay drawbacks, the story is ultimately what makes the game so much fun to play. This is the game that would make the Ultimate Ninja series so popular to play, and it would only get bigger with the next game, Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3. Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3 is in some ways a milestone. The biggest one for me is that this is the final game in the Ultimate Ninja series to be based on the original Naruto series. Knowing that, this game had to go out with a bang, and to many, it did, mainly thanks to a certain feature, but we'll get to that later. Ultimate Ninja 3 is also interesting for me because I did not play this game when I was younger, unlike the previous two games. So I'm going in pretty fresh on this game compared to the others. But I think that's enough introduction. Let's get started with the third part of Naruto November, and let's take a look at Naruto Ultimate Ninja 3. Starting out with, of course, the gameplay. Now right off the bat, I gotta say, this is the best game, gameplay-wise, so far in the series. Battles just feel so smooth compared to the previous two games. This one change alone makes the game funner to play in my opinion. But aside from that, there are a bunch of little improvements made that also make the battles more fun to play. For one, they got rid of the additional minigames that were added to the special attack, namely the button mashing one and the thumbstick moving one, and made it to where you only have to press the matching buttons more than your enemy. They also shortened the time for the special attacks, so instead of having to do the minigame multiple times, you just have to do it once and that ends the special attack. This greatly increases the pace of the battle. Back in the first game, the clunky battle system and the amount of time special attacks took caused battles to go on for way too long. In this game, battles go on for just the right amount of time. Not too long and not too short. Just perfect. Overall, the battles themselves haven't changed too much, but the changes that have been made make this easily the best playing Ultimate Ninja game so far. But the big changes to gameplay begin coming through when you start talking about the story. This game has two different story modes, Hero's History and Ultimate Contest. Hero's History actually has you going through the main Naruto story. There's no open world in this story, just pick missions from the menu, then you do a battle, boom, mission over. Rinse and repeat for 20 missions, then the story is finished. The story also gets rid of the customization, which allowed you to upgrade the different characters. So far, the story isn't looking that good when compared to the last game's story. But as someone who prefers linear stories compared to open world stories, I'm actually okay with all these changes. Plus, if you are upset about the removal of the open world and customization, don't be, because Ultimate Contest actually contains both of these things. Ultimate Contest is amazing. Like I said, I prefer linear stories compared to open world stories, but still, this mode is awesome. Naruto is able to freely walk around in Konoha, and the freedom of movement here is mind-blowing. You gotta understand, this game came out in Japan in 2005. You didn't get open world Naruto games all the time like you do today. So being able to run around in the world of Naruto was game-changing. Naruto doesn't have much of a moveset in the open world, but he has enough to get the job done. He can move around, double jump, and my favorite, he can run along almost any wall in the village. Eat your heart out, Spider-Man. Now yes, you can do other things in this mode, like side quests, missions, and fighting other characters, but you're mainly playing this mode for the free roaming more than anything else. Speaking of those side quests, you actually can't do any of them when you start the story mission. We'll talk about the story part of these modes later on, but for now, that's pretty much it as far as gameplay goes. I'm sure I am missing some details, but I feel as though I've covered the major changes. Now let's move on to the way the game adapts the look of the show. In this department, the game has made some interesting changes. This is the game where CyberConnect 2 started to move towards full CG representation of the show, and honestly, it works great here. The game does keep some of the hand-drawn style of the original games, but you could tell they were starting to move away from that style. But again, this new style works great, especially the new cutscenes. Most of the cutscenes are similar to the cutscenes in Ultimate Ninja 2, but there are new, full CGI cutscenes. For 2005, these are incredible, and these cutscenes, to me at least, are the predecessor to the CG style that would later be used in the Ultimate Ninja Storm games. Overall, the art style is an improvement on the previous games, and is a nice look at things to come. Finally, you know what time it is. Let's take a look at the narrative aspects of the story, starting with the Hero's History mode, which is the recap of the canon Naruto story. This mode goes through several story arcs of the show. These include the Genin training arc, which is the intro arc for the show, the Leaf Destruction arc, the Tsunade search arc, and the Sasuke retrieval arc. Now that might sound like a lot of material for this one story mode to cover, but this is an extremely abridged version of these story arcs. There are 20 missions in total across all 4 story arcs, with 10 of those missions being devoted to the Sasuke retrieval arc. Most of the finer details of these stories are left out for the sake of keeping the plot moving. For example, during the Sasuke retrieval mission, you just move from fight to fight without really delving into the character development that the show was so focused on. Is this a bad thing? Not necessarily. Like I said, it does keep the story moving, but for those looking for a deeper dive into the characters, you should probably just stick to the show. Now let's move on to the Ultimate Contest, and the story in this mode. Let's just get this out of the way. This story is complete filler. Tsunade hosts a tournament in the Hidden Leaf Village, where each ninja must earn crystals in order to earn points to move on to the final round. After that, whoever wins the final round will get to make a new rule for the Leaf Village. It's very obvious this story was just thrown together as an excuse for Naruto to roam the village and beat some people up, which is fine. It works for what it is. But the interesting part of the story is the rules that your opponents want to put in place for if they win. The reason for that is that they are so stupid that they end up being hilarious. Out of all the rules though, my personal favorite is Lee's rule.
I want to require everyone in the village to grow their eyebrows thick and robust like Guy Sensei's. Huh?
Just so stupid that it's perfect. Now this technically is the end of the story section, but there's one thing I would like to talk about, and that's the voice acting. I haven't brought it up at this point just because I didn't feel like it was that necessary to talk about. But this game is different, and I'm gonna explain why. Now every Naruto game features the cast from the show, but this is the first game where I feel like the acting was on par with the show. Granted, all the things that I'm saying only apply to the hero's history mode, but still, the acting in this mode is great, and I think this comes down to one thing. The game came out in the US in 2008. By this point, the English actors had been playing the characters for nearly 3 years, so they had definitely figured out the characters by this time. The voice acting allows this story mode to not be just good, but great. And now that I think about it, that's something I can say about the whole game. This game isn't just good, it's great. Everything here feels like CyberConnect 2 truly fixed some of the problems of the previous games. Overall, at this point, this truly is the highlight of the Ultimate Ninja series. The story mode is fun, the open world is amazing, and this truly feels like the team behind the game cared about making a great Naruto game. Overall, this game gets my stamp of approval. But we're not done yet. Join me next time for the final video of Naruto November, where we'll be looking at Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja 4. Well, here we are. We've reached the end of the first ever Naruto November. Gotta say, it's been a lot of fun taking a look at this series and discovering what I really think about each game. But all good things must come to an end. And we're gonna end off with Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja 4. It's 2009, and Naruto Shippuden has premiered in the US. You're probably thinking, man, this is great. But guess what? That's not it. The next installment of the Ultimate Ninja series also came out in 2009. Surely this doesn't mean that they rushed the game just to get in on the hype for Naruto Shippuden. Absolutely not. There's no way CyberConnect 2 and Bandai Namco, the publisher of the game, would do that. Well... First of all, let me get this out of the way. This game has 2 story modes. One is called Hero Mode. I didn't play this mode for reasons I'll discuss later. Then, there's Master Mode, which is where all the gameplay you're seeing comes from. Now as far as regular battles go, they're still good. They're about on par with the battles from Ultimate Ninja 3. It's the other type of combat in the story where the major problems come in. You see, in Master Mode, they bring back the free roaming of the Ultimate Contest mode from Ultimate Ninja 3. The free roaming itself is still quite fun. It still feels really good to traverse the world. They've even added some new moves that make it more fun. Outside of the exploration, there's the combat. And oh boy, this combat is bad. Pretty much this is how the combat works. You go into a room, enemies spawn, then the fight begins. You repeatedly press the circle button to attack. You can also press the triangle button and then the circle for a Rasengan attack. Lastly, during your circle attack, a prompt will come up to press triangle to activate the first jam. Then later, you press triangle again, you can activate the second jam. These are unblockable attacks, and can do big damage, so always use this if you have a chance. Doesn't sound so bad, right? Well, you would think so, but here's why this combat sucks. 1, it happens to you frequently. You see, a majority of this Master Mode takes place in this random mountain. Certain rooms are fighting rooms, meaning anytime you go through these rooms you have no choice but to fight. Big problem with this is that after you get through a certain point in the mountain, you have to go all the way back out of the mountain, and anytime you go through a fight room, you have to fight the enemies all over again. I get having to fight them when you first go through the room, but having to fight the same battles all over again is just annoying, and it makes the story last longer than it ever needs to. 2. The battles are so repetitive. You do the same thing every single battle. Mash the circle button, occasionally do a Rasengan, and then jam attack. And that's it. Rinse and repeat until A, you get tired of the game, or B, you start questioning your life choices and why you've decided to play this game. Third reason, there are boss battles using this type of combat. One where you fight this weird dog thing, and another where you fight this gang leader guy, and they both suck. The reason I included these two fights is because they contain everything wrong with the combat as mentioned previously, but also because they are so long. It took me a little over 14 minutes to beat this stupid dog thing. And the gang leader was no slouch either. I ended up just having to spam Rasengan to do decent damage and not die. These two boss fights were the only time in the game where dying was an actual possibility. Speaking of which, the fourth and final reason this combat sucks is because the combat sections are stupid easy. These are the only two where I had trouble, and I had to use healing items to survive. Every other battle was so easy that I probably could have just spammed circle and won, as the circle attacks seemed to automatically lock onto enemies. Granted, there's more to the story than the combat, but in order to progress the story and get to the interesting parts, you have to engage in the combat, and it makes this story mode almost unplayable in my opinion. Now, am I being harsh about this combat? Maybe, but I don't care. This is just how I feel about it. Now, you might be thinking there's more to talk about in terms of gameplay, but not really. The only other thing that you really do is complete side quests, which I don't care for. There's the free roaming and the regular 1v1 battles, and like I said, both of these things haven't changed much, except for maybe a few things. So now let's move on to the graphics. They literally haven't changed since Ultimate Ninja 3. Granted, that's not exactly a bad thing, as Ultimate Ninja 3 wasn't a bad looking game, but considering the jump between Ultimate Ninja 2 and 3, it is slightly disappointing. Now you know what's next. Let's talk about how the game adapts the story of the show. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this might be the worst in the Ultimate Ninja series when it comes to this aspect of the game. For one, remember when I said I would explain later why I decided to skip the hero mode? Well, now I can explain. Hero mode goes over the original Naruto before Shippuden. The problem with this is that Ultimate Ninja 3 exists, and I would much rather play that game than this one. Also, this is the first released game for Naruto Shippuden, so why would I want to experience the original Naruto story? I want to see the new story. Good grief, I already have problems with the story and I haven't even touched Master Mode yet. So Master Mode actually does focus on the new Shippuden story, but not right away. Instead, you have to go for a pretty boring filler plot about a village sacrificing a girl to appease the monster that lives in a cave. Yeah, it's kind of boring, especially because it took me 2.5 hours to beat it. Then, and only then, can you finally move on into the actual canon Naruto Shippuden story. This game adapts the Rescuing Gaara arc from the show. However, and this is the important thing, it doesn't even adapt the whole storyline.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
That's right. After fighting Itachi, the story just goes to credits and that's it. Now you're probably wondering, why don't I have footage of the Itachi fight or the end? Well, that's because I gave up on the story. You see, I already knew about the ending before I played this game, so I was already prepared for the disappointment awaiting me. What I was not prepared for was the amount of filler in this game. Even after you complete the stupid long opening chapter, you still have to go through stupid filler, like the gang leader thing. Now you might be thinking, that's just the filler stuff. I'm sure when the actual events from the show come up, they're great. I thought that would be the case as well, but oh boy, was I wrong. The main example of this bad adaptation of the show events comes in the form of the Bell Test. Now this is an important event in Naruto Shippuden. This is the first battle of the show, and it's a reintroduction to Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi, and it shows off their new abilities. In the game, you just chase Kakashi down and press a button. Boom, it's done. This is just sad. Now back in the day, I wouldn't have blamed you for playing this. There just wasn't a whole lot of Shippuden content out there. But nowadays we have Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 and Clash of Ninja Revolution 3. Two Naruto Shippuden games that adapt the same story as Ultimate Ninja 4 but do it much better. Mainly because, they actually finished the story. Ultimate Ninja 1's story mode wasn't that great, but it never directly adapted a specific storyline, so I can forgive it there. Ultimate Ninja 4 does directly adapt a storyline, but doesn't go all the way through with it, so I can fault it for that. Now I feel the main reason for this is that this game came out the same year as the premiere of Shippuden, so the show probably hadn't even finished the story by the time the game came out. This is why I made a reference to the game being rushed at the beginning of the video. I feel like Bandai Namco really wanted to have the first Naruto Shippuden game out on the market. In the end though, no matter what happened behind the scenes, Ultimate Ninja 4 became a disappointing game, and a sad ending to the Ultimate Ninja series. Except, this wasn't the end. At least for those outside of North America. For you see, in December of 2007, Ultimate Ninja 5 was released in Japan and Europe. But again, not for North America. Why? I don't know. Probably because at this point Bandai Namco wanted to move on from the PS2. I couldn't give you an exact reason, but as for my thoughts on the game from the footage I have seen, it looks better than Ultimate Ninja 4, but that's all I can really say without playing the game myself. But with that out of the way, we have finally looked at every Ultimate Ninja game. Now let's rank them from worst to best. At the bottom, of course, Ultimate Ninja 4. Avoid like the plague. Next up, Ultimate Ninja 1 may have some rough parts, but it's the one that started it all, so it deserves some credit there. In second place is Ultimate Ninja 2. A huge step in the right direction for the series. This game featured a better story mode and was just overall a much better game than the first. But it was immediately topped by the next game, Ultimate Ninja 3. Just a perfect representation of the series. A love letter to the world of Naruto and the characters that inhabit it. This is a good game, and it deserves to be remembered even in this massive ocean that is Naruto games.
Thank you all for joining me for the very first ever Naruto November. I hope you stick around for not only the next video on the channel, but next year for Naruto November 2. But until then, thank you all so much for watching these videos, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.